startups, it's more like an art, right, than a science.
Yeah.
I think one thing is always thinking about the go-to-market. We as entrepreneurs, we tend to think too much about the technology and do we have a cool technology or not? Is it defensible? But sometimes you need to think, how am I going to sell this product? And you need to think about it from day one, exactly as you think about the algorithm and the code.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Lomitech, and sponsored by Homeward Ventures, Hippo Insurance, Upwest, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and Birthright Excel. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Meet Idan Tendler, co-founder and CEO of Bridgecrew. Idan is a serial entrepreneur, vice president of the DevSecOps product line in the Prisma Cloud Business Unit at Palo Alto Networks. He was previously co-founder and CEO of Bridgecrew, a pioneer in cloud security solutions for developers, which was acquired by Palo Alto Networks in March of 2021 for $200 million, less than 2 years after it was founded. Idan was also the co-founder and CEO of Fortscale, a leading user behavior analytics startup, which was acquired by RSA Security in 2018. Before that, he was founder and head of the cybersecurity business unit at Elbit Systems, Israel's leading defense integrator, and served in the IDF's elite intelligence and cyber unit 8200.
Idan Tendler, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Thank you, Michael. I'm great. Thanks for hosting me here in this romantic place.
I feel the same way that you do, and I just love being able to do this in person, especially in conversations like this. And we just had an amazing conversation getting to know each other, and I'm really excited to now share with a lot of my friends a little bit about your own journey, both as a person but also as an entrepreneur. Today you're at Palo Alto Networks because your startup Bridgecrew with two amazing co-founders was recently acquired by Palo Alto.
Yep.
By just less than 2 years, which is a story on its own. Before that, with Fortscale, your other startup, and we share a lot in common in general. So I'm just happy to do this conversation together.
Yeah, me too.
Tell me a little bit about who you are as Idan. Who, in your core, who is Idan?
Wow. So I'm from Rishon. I was born and raised in Rishon LeZion in Israel, and I just came back from like 7 years in San Francisco in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But I'm, eventually I'm from Rishon.
Eventually from Rishon.
Yeah.
An engineer, entrepreneur, thinker. How do you define yourself?
These days, like a dad, a husband, entrepreneur, and a leader, I guess.
What does that mean to
you? From the day I remember myself, I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to, change the status quo of things. Only now I see it in retrospect.
Interesting. Is it mainly in technology, or do you also see that in real world?
When I was a kid, when I was in Unit A200, it wasn't about technology. It was about teams, and it was about building processes and about building new projects. Because I'm not coming from a technological background.
Right.
So this is why I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I have an uncle, which I admire, and he is coming from the entrepreneurship world, but he has a background in hardware, like very, very technology. So when I was a kid, I said, wow, that's cool, but I will never be an entrepreneur because I'm not that into technology. I was into, Arabic and the politics and then building stuff. And again, only in retrospect, I think I was actually an entrepreneur.
So you're not just an entrepreneur, you're a serial entrepreneur with now 2 startups behind you.
Yep.
And who knows what will happen in the future. What makes that leap? So how do you go from saying, I don't think I'll be an entrepreneur to, building Fortscale, then spending time hiking, you mentioned, to figure out what company you want to build next?
Yeah, so, life. This, I guess, what happened. So after I finished my military service in Unit A200, I started to learn engineering, but it was industrial engineering. So it wasn't like a real engineering, as my wife says. And I did a couple of gigs in the VC world actually in Elron. For the first time I saw myself meeting CEOs and founders, and it was really cool. But the first real conversation opportunity I got was from the head of Unit A200.
Wow.
Yair Cohen. I knew him. We worked together in the past, and he just started. I'm talking about 2009.
Wow.
He just started to work in Elbit, which is like the biggest, defense integrator in Israel. And he told me, yeah, Tendler, well, you should come here. Let's do something around cybersecurity. And to be honest, I knew what is cyber more not from the security part, from the other part, from my military service, but I didn't know what is cybersecurity. And he said, yeah, you should join. And I also didn't think I will work in a defense industry, right?
Right.
But it was like a good opportunity and a good challenge, and I just joined. It was just me and a laptop.
Wow.
And for a couple of months, we just prepared what should we do. And after 2 years, it was a group of, 70, 80 people that I led. And we became one of the fastest growth engine of this huge company. And we dealt with cybersecurity, sold millions of dollars across the world. And one day, one guy that I worked with came into my room, I remember it, and he told me, Idan, you should have your own startup. And this is where I said, oh, actually, this is what I'm doing here.
That's actually what, yeah.
I'm building a startup, but in a bigger corp. The next day, I just quit.
Actually.
Yeah. And we built actually together our first startup, and that was Fortscale.
Unbelievable. Tell me a little bit about, not necessarily the journey of Fortscale, but if, moving from one startup to the next, having spent meaningful time with Fortscale and being, a very thoughtful person, what are some of the key takeaways as you transitioned into, or you started Bridgecrew, and specifically, how do you think those then impacted, the trajectory of Bridgecrew, which obviously was an amazing success?
Wow. So yeah, Fortscale was a long journey of 5-6 years. We were in very deep area of security, finding insider threats, like finding Edward Snowden that was in the NSA, finding it in your company, in your bank. We raised more than $20 million, but it was very, very challenging journey. We had amazing experience. We had Cisco, we had Yahoo as customers. But it was challenging, and eventually we were acquired by RSA Security, but it was like not that good of an exit, and I didn't join RSA Security, and I decided that I need to take like some time off. And back then I was living in San Francisco. I had 2 kids, now I have 3, and I just started to hike.
Literally hike.
Yeah. I think I know every hill, every mountain in the Bay Area. Like, give me 3 hours from San Francisco, I've been there. And I just hiked.
So you would wake up, go to a hill that...
I flew the kids usually at the school, and just took some food, usually chocolate chip cookies, and went hiking.
Not for the physical aspect of it, or...
No, I just heard some good music. Sometimes I took good friends with me. Sometimes mainly it was by myself. And then I started actually writing.
Wow.
So I brought like a paper and a pen, and then a laptop, and I just started writing. And I just started writing, the key lessons that I learned from the Fortscale experience. So we started with all the good things, like bring good customers, bring good VCs, and then the bad things. But then it became personal. So what did I do which was good, and what did I do that was really wrong? Because of me, because I'm a person eventually. And it took me a couple of months to reach that level. I knew that I want to do another startup. It burned like really, really hard inside my heart, but I didn't know exactly in which area.
Right.
Actually, I didn't want to do it in security.
Wow.
I wanted to do other things. And then a year later, I founded Bridgecrew.
Why? What was the thought of straying away from security? Was it mainly to experience something else?
So first, yeah, I wanted to, I saw myself as an entrepreneur, as a CEO,
As a CEO.
as a manager, as a leader, not necessarily as a security professional. And I said, okay, I want to, give me a new challenge. And another thing in security, usually the majority of security companies, they try to sell some fear.
Right.
You have to buy us unless the
Yes.
North Koreans will come, right? And I didn't like it. I wanted to do something more positive.
Okay.
It's a more positive value. By the way, eventually Bridgecrew, we did sell a positive value. We just came to developers
Right.
and we said, hey, we will help you. We will
Yeah.
help you to be more effective and to be more efficient.
Right.
So in that case, yeah, we did security eventually, but it was positive.
So we're talking about the CEO and leadership and entrepreneurship. Now you mentioned as we were walking in, I was shocked that you're not a developer yourself.
Yep.
You don't really write code, and
Never write a single line of code.
never wrote a single. I know that I'm proud of it because effectively you've built a tool that was very effectively helping developers. You both went into the open source world, and I spoke with Barak quite a bit about it, and it sounds like an incredible journey. A way to lead that journey is by truly understanding, developers and not just their day job, but how they think and how they act. But then creating a product that actually worked, and you
Yep.
leading this mothership and being the captain of it. How does that work without not knowing how to write a single line of code?
Sometimes it's a disadvantage, but sometimes it's an advantage. First of all, in Bridgecrew, I founded it with Barak and Guy.
Yeah.
Well, amazing.
Right.
And they're amazing with their capabilities and technical background, and we complement each other a lot. And this is one thing. I didn't feel that I missed this background. But second, I just know which questions, I guess, to ask. And I know who should I ask it. So the first thing I did, and then we did it together, we just interviewed a lot of people. We interviewed something like 100 security managers, CISOs, before we developed something.
Wow.
And that was actually one of the conclusions. You remember my hiking?
Yeah.
That was one of the lessons learned. Never write a product without being certain that somebody will actually use it. And we did it. And when you talk to so many people from diverse, backgrounds and big companies, small companies, then you start to hear what they actually need. And I think this was an advantage I brought to the table from day one.
Wow. So if you're looking at the day-to-day of running Bridgecrew for the very short amount of time that it went on, which is the amazing piece of it, how did you, balance the experiences you had with your co-founders? So very, very different experiences, very different strengths and weaknesses. Did you have a lot of conversations about it? Were you all very intentional about it on who makes what decision and how much information? Because obviously sometimes maybe Barak would have an idea, and to back it up, he would have to go and explain it on this tangent on why the developers will love it. How much of those did you need to have in order to be effective in leading this company?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure I thought enough about it. I guess it's like a marriage, like, being a couple. Each one is bringing something else to the table, and it's all about chemistry.
Right.
It was clear from day one that I'm more the outbound voice. I'm bringing the customers, I'm bringing the investors, I'm bringing the advisors. I'm telling the story of who we are. And it was very clear that Guy, who is a brilliant product manager and VP of product, is leading the product and decides what actually are we building. And it was clear that Barak is the genius, that the CTO that brings the open source and building the community around it and actually create the first engineering team.
Right.
And it was clear. I'm not sure even we talked about it.
Wow.
It was very clear. But also, it's like marriage, it's personalities. Usually I'm passionate and I'm driving, let's do this. And guys say, hey, let's wait like 2 weeks before we do that. And Barak is thinking whether it's actually could be done.
Right.
So we balance each other also with that.
On your next journey, let's say you build another company at some point. What is maybe one or two things that you're gonna come in with real conviction? that you're saying like, no matter what, this is what I know, and this is how I want to run this. Whether if it's about the team, about the market, about fundraising, what is something that you're coming into this next step, really with your kishke burning?
So I think startups it's more like an art, right, than a science.
Yeah.
I think one thing is always thinking about the go-to-market. We as entrepreneurs, we tend to think too much about the technology and do we have a cool technology or not? Is it defensible? But sometimes you need to think, how am I going to sell this product? And you need to think about it from day one, exactly as you think about the algorithm and the code. And this is something I'm super, super passionate about, building a strategy and a thesis of the go-to-market. In our case, it was bottom-up. It was product-led growth, which was really unique.
Yeah.
I think we were one of the first security companies.
Yeah, I've only been hearing about it the last 2-3 years properly, which is right around the time you started.
Yeah, I mean, usually security, you're setting top-down, right? You're going to the CISO, you scare him over, and then you're getting a deal of $200,000. In our case, we understood that the persona, the user, is not the security officer, is the developer, and they don't care about security.
No.
And if they do, they will never, run a POC, a proof of concept, or they will never pay you a big check. They want to try it by themselves. And maybe they will pay you $100. It's it's like the opposite model. And we understood that we need to copy models of Slack and of Twilio, companies that really did it in a PLG, in a product-led growth mode. We didn't have too many models in security, so we needed to copy them, but to translate that to the security world, to the DevOps world.
Take me back a little bit, a lot. Take me back a lot. Elementary school, middle school. Young Idan.
Yeah.
What fascinates you?
First of all, my hair. I had definitely more hair back then.
Most people that I have on the show, they say, well, I was an engineer. I used to take things apart. I used to code from 5 years old. It's not necessarily the case here. What really fascinated you in the day-to-day?
So actually, a lot of things. I had a lot of imagination, and I like to build stuff, sometimes physical stuff. Like sometimes I took my Playmobil and built cities inside my room. And I didn't let anyone, including my sister, to go in. So it was more like a secret. And then I wrote my first newspaper. It was, I think, just for me, maybe for the neighbors, then for the school. And then, I decided I need to be in the student council, although there was not a student council back then in my school, which was like one of the biggest schools in Israel, in Rishon. So I built it, and actually I became the chairman of this council. And it was always around, learning new stuff. One day I decided I need to learn Arabic. I think it was like the 8th or 9th grade.
Wow.
Really, it was really important for me.
Still
I just learned it. Yeah.
Okay.
And, I really wanted to do that, but also to be with other people, right?
Yeah.
And to get to know other people. But I think only in Unit 800, maybe you feel the same. When I joined, I felt like really home. For the first time, I saw people that were more like me, sometimes much better than me. And I think this is the moment that I felt really good with myself.
Now, if you look today, and not like beyond Bridgecrew and Fortscale, if you look today and what inspires you, either, generally in this world or inspires you to think differently about the world, well, what is it? Is it the ability to do stuff as an entrepreneur, family, problems in the world? What inspires you?
Wow, well, first of all, I'm now a VP in Palo Alto. So we're doing the same thing that we did before, but now in a bigger corporate, and I own that. And it's funny, Palo Alto is, selling more than $4 billion a year, but probably not a single dollar is coming from a credit card.
Wow.
We are the first machine in Palo Alto Networks that actually you could buy with a credit card. And building a bottom-up motion in this huge company, that's an amazing experience. And actually, I love it a lot. I love challenges, not only technological, but also people. How do you build a bigger team in a bigger organization? And we just came back to Israel. So maybe the third thing is we just came back with the family after 7 years in San Francisco.
With three kids.
3 kids, young kids, crazy, amazing. And we feel again like immigrants.
Wow.
We know this space, we love it. We have families and friends, and we have Jerusalem, but we feel like different because we're coming with the experience we had in the Bay Area, which is more or less the opposite, right? You know that. So it's fascinating to me to see how we do that.
Well, one of the things that I have to say that really inspired me before we started this episode is we talked about the transition to Israel, and one of the things that you mentioned was that it was such a strong intrinsic conviction that you had as a family, this is where you want to be. And not necessarily because you agree with politics or because you agree with what's happening. In fact, we both share the fact that there are things that we don't agree with, but the fact that at the end there's something so strong inside of us that pulls you. I think that's something very, very special. And I gained a lot of motivation of that for me and for a lot of people that I know that are very conflicted with these thoughts.
Yeah, so I didn't see myself as conflicted. I insisted that my kids will talk Hebrew, and we were Israelis. We celebrated not only the Jewish holidays, but the Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Independence Day.
Yeah.
And it was all about Israel and Israeli song and culture. But eventually they were Americans, right? And
they grew up there, yeah.
Yeah, and I was into, so one day my mom called me, did you see what happened in politics or whatever? Yeah. And of course I saw. I'm hearing Galetza like more than you, right? I mean, Twitter, I was really. But then we said, okay, maybe now it's time, following the acquisition, maybe now that was time for us to go back, right? And I remember that we took the kids, one of them was 2 years old, but back then 7 years old, we told her, hey, we consider moving back to Israel. And I remember that she immediately started crying. And the first thing she said, will I see the family? And I understood that she was waiting for that for her entire life.
Wow.
Without us even telling her that one day we will be back in Israel. She knew in her back of her mind that it's temporary.
Wow, I'm about to cry here, Dan. It's amazing. What are a few words you would use to describe yourself?
Probably passionate.
Yeah.
As I mentioned. Caring. A leader. And friendly.
I'll take all of those 100%, Idan. Toda rabba. Thank you very much. I can't wait for what you do now at Palo Alto Networks as vice president there, and for whatever else you do, whether it's in the private sector or any other sector. I just can't wait. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.